Welcome, everyone. We're just going to give it a couple minutes so folks can all join the webinar. We'll start in 2 or 3 minutes. Welcome, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. There will likely be people who log in as we're in the midst of things. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We've been having quite a few virtual talks lately. This talk tonight, though, is one that will probably be very unique. I'll say a little more about that in a second. First of all, just to introduce myself, some of you will recognize me. Some of you, this might be your first webinar, virtual talk that you've attended for the Bronx Historical Society. So my name is Dr. Stephen Payne. I'm the director of the Bronx Historical Society, and I'm very pleased to be hosting tonight's talk. As you can see from the cover of the book that's on display right now on all of your screens, tonight's talk will be on A Bronx Christmas. It's a pretty new and really enjoyable read. We have the author, Betty Bornay, with us tonight, and I'll say a little bit about her in a second. But first of all, just to give folks an idea of what to expect tonight. So this won't be your average book talk, kind of, a little academic-y, sometimes a little stodgy in nature, as book talks sometimes are. This will be part book talk, part comedy routine. The author is a very entertaining and lively entertainer. But let me just say a little bit about the author, who will be taking it away from me in a second. Betty Bornay, a native Bronxite. Betty is a lifelong arts and theater enthusiast and a voice actor. She has always loved writing, especially humor. After finishing A Bronx Christmas, she wrote a second book in 2 weeks, Letters to Santa from the Lovelorn, an adult songbook of the oldest letters Santa ever received. And if we have time tonight, and if we're so lucky, she might even read a couple of those letters from that second book for us as well. She runs an entertaining YouTube channel, which she'll say more about as well, and is currently working on a musical. Her life mission is to make people laugh and to help folks escape from the insanity of our present days by escaping to nostalgia. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen and I'm going to hand it over to Betty.
Thank you. This is Betty Bornay, author of A Bronx Christmas, a nostalgic novel about a young girl's impossible wish in 1957 New York. And before I do anything, Dr. Payne, may I call you Stephen?
Of course, by all means.
By the way, what kind of doctor are you?
A doctor of history.
Oh, I was hoping maybe you'd be a podiatrist because my toe hurts, but that's not a problem. Not a problem. Anyway,
Unfortunately not.
well,
Sorry to disappoint.
well, I want to thank you. You know, the people out there don't know, but this man has been so good to me. He has done everything to help me get this book out there, to get on the screen here, to send out emails because I am so technologically challenged. I have it so extreme. I should be in the hospital. I'm so technologically challenged. That's how bad it is. So seriously, Stephen, thank you for all that you've done for me.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. My pleasure working with you, Betty.
Well, I hope we have a good time this evening. First of all, I want everybody to have a cup of coffee. I am having my coffee, which, as you can see, is from a real percolator. Back in the 50s, we used real percolators. We didn't use these stupid machines or anything, and we had a cup of coffee. Anybody could just pop in at any time, sit down, have a cup of coffee. We talked, we had coffee cake. It was just a more friendly, informal way of life. Now, I am a baby boomer. I'm one of the older baby boomers. So I wrote this book basically for baby boomers. I am not a professor. I am not a scholar. I am not an expert in Bronx history or Bronx geology or Bronx geography, like you've heard on this show before, but I am an expert in nostalgia. So that's what I'm going to bring to you tonight. I hope that those of you who are older baby boomers will really get a lot out of this. I'm hoping it'll bring back memories, things that you've forgotten all about. And for those of you who are younger, I'm hoping it'll open up a whole new world for you of the way life used to be. And I think the way life should go back to being, because frankly, I can't deal with this. Now, I grew up in the Tremont Avenue section of the Bronx. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but it was just a plain old nothing neighborhood. You know, after the war, that is World War II, when the soldiers were coming home, it was hard to find housing. So you took whatever you could get. My parents settled in this neighborhood in the Bronx, and it was nothing special. I mean, it was nothing beautiful. It was just a neighborhood. But everybody was so nice. We all knew each other. We were friendly. We trusted each other. We helped each other. It was just a different kind of world than now. So the building we lived in was a small, nondescript a building. It looked pretty much like the others, about 5 stories tall, with a small stoop in the front. Everyone would sit on the stoop when the weather was nice and they just talk, whatever. So anyway, where I lived on 176th Street between Clinton and Crotona Avenues. On this side, about 2 blocks over, was Crotona Park North, which was a fabulous park. When the weather was nice, my father would take me and my younger sister there for walks on Sundays, give my mother a little time off, you know. In this direction, you walk 3 blocks to PS 92. And a half a block up in that direction was Junior High School 44. I went to both of those schools. I don't know if any of you did, but if you did, please let me know. I'd just love to know. Maybe we knew each other and we didn't know it, you know, whatever. Anyway, oh, before I forget, they used to have a movie studio called the Gold Medal Studio. It was originally called Biograph, and I think it was started in maybe the 1920s or so, but it became Gold Medal Studio. And they filmed things like Butterfield 8. If you remember that movie with Elizabeth Taylor and Eddie Fisher, Butterfield 8. And they also filmed a TV series there called Car 54, Where Are You? Do you remember that? Do you remember the theme song? I do. If you know, sing along with me, will you? There's a holdup in the Bronx. Brooklyn's broken out in fights. There's a traffic jam in Harlem that's brought up to Jackson Heights. There's a scout troop short a child. Cruise ships Jew at Isle Wild. Car 54, where are you? We would see them filming all over the neighborhood. And I remember one time, the very tall actor, what was his name? Fred Gwynn. They needed a dog. They needed someone with a dog to scare him away. So I took our Chihuahua, Tammy. I thought that would be funny, having a Chihuahua to chase away this 6'3" policeman. Unfortunately, they chose another dog, but I tried. I tried to get my dog into stardom. So before I digress in too many directions, I want to tell you why I wrote this book. This idea just came to me. It's like God sent it to me saying, you have to write this book. It's needed now. And I'm going to read my introduction, which is a little strange, but it tells, it tells exactly where my head is at. It says, be sure to read this. It's important. My mother said so. This is a book whose time has come, an antidote to all the craziness going on all around us. So why did I write this book? Because the world is going to hell in a handbasket and I can't stand it anymore. So I created a temporary respite. Today's world is just too overwhelming for me and many other people for that matter, due to out of control technology as well as other factors. AI is starting to merge with the human brain, which means the job you do, the college papers you write, etc., can be instantly done by the touch of a keyboard. You'll eventually become obsolete, and won't have anything to do but get sunburned on the beach while you watch The Real Housewives of Venus on your iPad. Now, this brings me to mind a marvelously prophetic song you may remember from years ago. It was by Zega and Evans, and it was called In the Year 2525. And there's a line where it goes, where some machine is doing that for you. My friends, we're there. I just want to assure you that this book was written by a real live human being. Also, I can't keep up with the constant upgrades on my stupid so-called smartphone or computer, so I'm a regular at Geek Squad. In fact, my neighbor down the street said, why don't I have an 8-year-old kid from around the block on retainer? Because I need someone to help me with all this technology, and I'm not kidding. Anyway, technology aside, the world is exploding with wars and invasions everywhere. People are ending up homeless. Crime is rampant. Pandemics have filled humanity with a steady diet of fear, and on and on and on. Have I depressed you enough? Okay, I won't fetch anymore. But I did find a way to escape, to keep my sanity. I don't know about you, but I often find peace and solace by escaping to the past, to memories of people and places and situations that bring a smile to my face. See? When things become overwhelming, I lie down on my vintage chaise and I put on some 50s music and I close my eyes and I take a mental mini vacation. And it works. Hence this novel. Actually, it's a novella. I was told it's a novella because it's not that long. And I just love that word, novella. It's so Italian. It sounds so sexy, doesn't it? But I digress. Now, journey back with me to 1957, a pivotal year from my childhood when life wasn't perfect, but it was simpler. People were kinder, and our so-called problems didn't amount to a hill of beans. The place is the exotic Bronx, New York, a nondescript but typical neighborhood where people looked out for each other, where it was safe to let your children go anywhere alone, and where kids were still kids. I was inspired by that wonderful movie I love, A Christmas Story, based on the writings of Gene Shepard. That kid Ralphie who wants the BB gun and they keep saying, no, you'll shoot your eye out. Well, films like that help us forget our problems and replace them with memories and laughter. I don't know much about boys, but I'm an authority on little girls, their dreams, their problems, their bad hair days. So I know firsthand what I'm writing about. Each chapter is filled with humor and occasionally some poignancy. Now, if you're over 65, female or a New Yorker, this book will be very nostalgic. If you're none of those things, leave the room. No, I'm just kidding. No, if you're none of those things, you'll be transported to a time, a place, and a world that you wish you had known. You will visit places that may or may not exist anymore, but you'll enjoy them through the eyes of each character. When it comes to the human spirit, some things never change, regardless of the time or setting. You won't find any political correctness here. I'm warning you. The rules and attitudes may seem antiquated or downright incredulous, but remember, this is an historical novel, so accept it for what it is. I know you'll enjoy it because my mother said so. So I have chosen some some sections of chapters. Let me just have a sip of my coffee. Mm, mm, yum. This book goes from Labor Day weekend through New Year's Eve. It covers all the holidays. I went to PS 92, as I told you, in junior high school 44. So in the very, very first paragraph, now remember, I'm a voice actor, so the narrator is the adult Juliana, who's our 9-year-old heroine. So the narrator starts, the new year. No matter where you live in the world, you know that the new year starts at the stroke of midnight on New Year's Eve. But that's not necessarily so if you're a kid, at least not in my neighborhood. The new year always began the day after Labor Day. That's when the school year officially started, leading to the countdown to when we got our freedom back again. You might say that Tuesday was the kickoff for a year-long round of homework, report cards, parent-teacher meetings, and dreaded math. But the big gamble was the luck of the draw when it came to which teacher you might have to endure for a whole year. Being the optimist that I am, I chose to dwell on the good stuff. You know, recess, lunch, Christmas vacation, art projects, you know what I mean. The way I figure it, even with the possibility of an awful teacher, it helps to keep a positive outlook. Now, I go through the people waking up and we meet all the characters, and we go to this. Junior high school 44 was a block away, so our mother wasn't concerned about Rosemary going there by herself. I was glad, because if Mommy had accompanied her, Rosemary would have had a conniption fit, the likes of which the Bronx would never have seen before. I could understand how she felt, though, when Mommy took me and Mickey to PS 92, several blocks away. Mickey was starting first grade, and Mommy wanted to make sure she was okay, met her new teacher, etc. I was entering fourth grade and felt old enough that I didn't need my mother to come along. I lingered a few paces behind them, hoping that the other kids wouldn't notice my mother, because it would be so embarrassing. When we got to school, we went into the office to get our class assignments. I was going to class 4 too. We all had to go to the gymnasium where classes were lining up next to signs taped on the floor. Now, I don't know how many of you remember that, but they would tape these signs to the floor and you would find it and line up and wait for your teacher to come. Mickey was lucky. She was getting Miss Nash as her teacher. I had Miss Nash in first grade. She was nice and kind, like the ideal grandmother everyone wished they had. She was an ancient maiden lady, thin as a rail, her white hair rolled at the back of her neck, wire-rimmed glasses perched on the end of her nose. And later I realized it was because of Miss Nash that I learned to love school. And I'll bet those of you who are older remember teachers looking like Miss Nash. I told Mommy I found my class so she didn't have to leave Mickey alone. We had to line up in 2 rows, girls in one line, boys in the other. Remember that? I was happy to see some kids from the 3rd grade, and I mentioned their names here. Okay, we were standing around talking about our summer vacations. Vito came over to Jeffrey, poked him in the ribs, and laughed. I heard you're getting Mrs. Doomcoff this year. Jeffrey pointed to the sign on the floor and said, "No, Mrs. Gutstein, class 4 too." Vito laughed again and said, "Doomcoff, you'll find out what I mean," as he walked away. A few minutes later, the bell rang, and our teachers came to escort us to our new classrooms. If a picture was worth 1,000 words, we were speechless. Walking toward us was what looked like a Sherman tank with legs. You could just about feel the gymnasium floor shake with each step of her orthopedic shoes. There stood a huge mass of gray, a gray suit on a body that looked like a large padded rectangle, wild gray hair that looked like a rat's nest, and a big gray purse containing, I don't know. "I'm Mrs. Gutstein, your new teacher. You are gonna follow me into our classroom. I want you to walk in 2 lines and no talking. Is that clear? A few heads shook in the affirmative, a few timid voices. Yes. What? I can't hear you. Yes, Mrs. Goodstein, we said as we quaked in our shoes. Okay, a little further along, the girls go home for lunch and they tell their mother all about what's happening. The three of us walked back to PS 92 for day 1, part 2 of school. Mrs. Gutstein had us write a short story about what we wanted to be when we grew up. I had no idea what I wanted to be, so I picked dancer. The purpose was to evaluate our writing skills or lack thereof. The rest of the afternoon was spent on dreaded math. We were doing long division. You all remember how awful long division was, don't you? Now, which was not only difficult for me, but apparently for everyone else too. She asked if everyone understood. No response. We were too embarrassed to admit we didn't. She asked if there were any questions. Again, nothing. So she wrote a couple of problems on the board and called on Stanley and Marcia to go up to the board and work it out in front of the whole class. Remember that phrase, work it out? I loved it. Okay, they both had difficulty, so she sent them back to their seats. The scowl on Mrs. Gutstein's face left them with their heads hanging down in shame. She explained the process again, wrote another problem on the board, and called on Larry to solve it. But he couldn't. Is there anybody in this classroom who has a brain in their head? She asked in a nasty tone. I've explained this to you enough times already. This isn't difficult. I must have gotten the stupidest 4th grade class this year, she shrilled as she tossed her arms up in exasperation. And just then, Irving Klein enthusiastically raised his hand and said he could do it. She held out the chalk for him. He solved it in about 30 seconds. Thank you, Irving. Excellent. I guess there's at least one student here who pays attention and learns. Irving Klein was an obnoxious little jerk. He always wore white shirts, bow ties, and suspenders. He was an exact replica of his father, the accountant. He even carried a briefcase to school, one of his father's. He bragged about how his father taught him everything because he was so smart. Irving's dream was to grow up to be just like his dad. He would make lots of money, like Dad does, take the family on vacations to Miami, like Dad does. He loved the set of Encyclopedia Britannica he got for his birthday and spent all his spare time reading it. He never stopped bragging about how much his older brother's bar mitzvah cost when they had it at the Concourse Plaza. He didn't impress us, though. We called him Snot Nose because he had allergies and his nose was always running. I guess the only one he might impress is Mrs. Gutstein. Well, Mrs. Gutstein wrote another problem on the board and called for volunteers to solve it. Since nobody raised their hands except Irving, she told Stanley to go back and try again. He got part of it done correctly, but still didn't get the right answer. Barely able to control her anger, Mrs. Gutstein shrieked, Dummkopf! Dummkopf! Oh, that dreaded word Vito tried to warn us about. Dummkopf? Dummkopf. Do you know what that means? It means stupid head, and that's what you are. And you're not the only one in this room. You kids better buckle down and study my class because I will not tolerate Dummkopfs. If Irving can understand this, I don't see why the rest of you can't. Ring, ring, ring. Saved by the bell. Now, I'm sure many of you can relate to that in your 1st grade or whatever class. Okay, I'm going to move ahead to a section. It's a very small, but I love it. It's called the deli. We would always, come home for lunch, make sandwiches, have Twinkies, whatever. But one day, when the mother got a part-time job and there was nothing in the house for the kids to make sandwiches, she left $1. And I just love this. She leaves $1 and she says, go to the deli and buy your lunch. I loved walking into the deli because it always smelled so delicious. It was a kosher deli. Although I didn't know what that meant, only that it was something Jewish. There was a big red neon sign in the window that said Zion. There was always sawdust on the old-fashioned tile floor that we liked to, ice skate on. Hanging above the long counter were all kinds of salamis and other meats. The men who worked there always smiled, but spoke with funny accents that were sometimes a little hard to understand. While waiting to order, Mr. Levy asked his customer, "You want maybe piece bread with the meat?" We tried not to laugh. "You want maybe piece bread with the meat?" That's the way he spoke. Well, we ordered 2 grilled frankfurters with mustard and sauerkraut, 2 square knishes, and 2 bottles of Pepsi. There was a dime left over, believe it or not, after $1 that we would spend on a couple of candy bars after school. We sat at one of the few tables, enjoying every bite. As we ate, we looked at the photos that were strung along the ceiling. There were pictures of 10 contestants competing for the title of Miss Rheingold. Now, I don't know how many of you remember that, but they had these beauty contests. They had Miss Subways, they had Miss Rheingold, a few of those. One girl was prettier than the next, so we discussed our favorites and made our choices. Everyone could vote simply by mailing in their choice. Rosemary, that's the 12-year-old sister, said she'd like to be Miss Rheingold or even Miss Subways someday. Maybe that would help her get discovered by a movie producer. Now, I'm going to move ahead to when Juliana, our heroine, and her mother get free tickets to go downtown to see Ice Capades. We had to take the Tremont Avenue bus to the Grand Concourse to get the D train to Madison Square Garden. It was exciting, especially riding on the subway. While we were waiting for the train, I explored all the vending machines on the platform. The larger machines sold many brands of cigarettes: Pall Mall, Kent, Viceroy, Lucky Strike, and my father's favorite, Camels. I don't even know if those even exist anymore. There were smaller machines which were attached to the iron pillars. One sold things to chew: gum, Sensen, Clorettes, breath mints. Do you remember those? Lifesavers, each costing a nickel. Another machine sold candy: Good and Plenty, Mars bars, M&Ms, Snickers, and my favorite, Milky Way. But the most intriguing vending machine of all sold Tangy Cosmetics. Do any of you older ladies remember Tangy? You can buy this stuff in the Vermont Country Catalog, by the way. For 25 cents, you could buy what they called color-changing lipstick or rouge. It was basically a one-color-fits-all kind of product. You put it on, and it, quote, gradually transforms into the perfect shade for you, unquote. This mystified and intrigued me, so I asked my mother for a quarter. She gave me a nickel. So I spent it on the most exotic thing I could find, a pack of violet mints. They tasted weird, but they were such a beautiful color. Do any of you remember violet mints? Okay, the train finally came. It was one of those rare older trains that were being replaced by the more modern styles. This one reminded me of the cattle car because the doors were very wide and were pulled open from one side only by the chair. They didn't open like this. They went like this, just one side. There were ads up near the ceiling advertising everything: Luster Cream shampoo, secretarial spools, Carter's little liver pills, a photo of Miss Subway of the month. Now, if you can go back far enough and you remember these cars, you will remember the seats. The seats were fun because you could move the back position, meaning the back part here that your back rests on. You could move it. By turning this little lever on the side, you could turn it this way or this way, and it would move it that way or that way. So you could face any direction you wanted and sit talking to your friends. It was the greatest. When Mommy and I got on board, a nice man got up and offered her his seat. Could you imagine that happening now? You're lucky if you can get in or out of the subway car alive without being crushed to death. Well, that's enough on this. I want to move ahead to another chapter now. There's a chapter where the 3 girls and their mother and the mother's neighbor and their boys go downtown to see the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. It's a freezing day. The kids are hungry. The little one has to go to the bathroom, even though they were told, do it before you leave home. So the closest place they could go is to the Horn and Hardart Automat. Do any of you remember that? It was a fixture in New York and in the Philadelphia area since I think the 1920s. But let me read this. Now, this is the first time these kids are seeing this. So if you've been to one of these Art Deco style places, you'll know what they're talking about here. We passed through the revolving doors of the Horn and Hardart Automat. It looked like we were on another planet. We could tell it was a restaurant because there were people eating everywhere, but there was a big wall with all kinds of tiny silver windows on it and a lady sitting up on a high platform in the middle of a room. A big staircase of fences of silvery colored metal separating areas reminded Tommy of Flash Gordon's spaceship on the TV serial. Ginny saw a table big enough to accommodate the 9 of us, so she rushed over to grab it, claiming it before someone else did. We took off our coats and left them on the chairs as Kathy was explaining what an automat was. Our mothers gave us each a quarter and told us to go to the lady on the platform to get nickels. Nikki wasn't tall enough, so Rosemary lifted her up, and this was so much fun. The lady was really nice and asked us about the parade. Ginny took us over to the wall and explained that you put your nickel in this slot, and then you turn the knob, and the door just pops open. And inside, you see different kinds of food. You take what you want. We were each allowed to get a piece of pie or cake, as well as a cup of nice hot chocolate to warm us. We looked over all the choices very carefully before making our selections. When we brought them to our table, Mommy took us to a machine that looked like a beautiful silver swan to get our drinks. We put in our nickels, held a cup underneath, and Mommy turned the spigot on. Presto, delicious smelling hot chocolate, and there was a bowl of real whipped cream that you could put on top. Mickey and the boys wolfed down their food and wanted more. The answer was no, because that would spoil our Thanksgiving dinner. Rosemary and I savored each bite and sip. Our mothers talked, blah, blah. We can forget that. But I want to stop here for a moment and show you something. I have a book called The Automat, about the Horn and Hardart Automat. I used to love to go there. Now, the food was pretty lousy, and so was the coffee, as a matter of fact. But I have something here I want to show you. I don't know how well you can see this, but this is an actual token. When they got rid of the nickels, you had to buy tokens. This is an actual token that you would put in the coffee machine with the beautiful swans, and you turn the spigot, the coffee would come out of their mouths. I have a couple more here that I made into pierced earrings. I still have these after all these years. And I have an article here from the newspaper. The last of the automats closed down in 1990, November of 1990. It was located on 42nd Street and 3rd Avenue. And here's a photo. I don't know how well you can see it, but you can see in the background, there are people. And in the background, the wall with all the little doors. Now, the automat was featured in a lot of movies. I know there was one with That Touch of Mink starring Doris Day, where her friend works there. So a lot of scenes were filmed there. And I also have something, you're not going to believe this in a million years. Let me show you. Here goes my Christmas tree, pardon me. This is an actual uniform that here's the little hat. See that? Here's the uniform and a little purple apron. Can you see that? This is what the ladies used to wear when they bussed the tables. There were no waitresses. You got everything yourself, but they bussed the tables. And I went there the last day before it closed, spoke to the manager, and I asked if I could buy one of these. He very kindly took me downstairs and he said, I'll just take it. Just take it. Isn't that wonderful? I have it after all these years. Now I want to turn to a chapter here. Where is it? The most wonderful time of the year. This one is almost purely visual. As I mentioned, Tremont Avenue was the main shopping drag. And as a child, my mother would give me $1 to buy a brand new box of ornaments every year. She'd say, go to Woolworths or Grant's and get them. This is an actual box they came in with the actual ornaments. They were always glass. This little tree, which I nearly just killed a moment ago, we had a couple of these. This is one of my actual trees that I had. And it's got real tinsel. This stuff is made of real aluminum foil. It's not that Mylar garbage they use now. It's heavy. It's got a lot of weight. And I would trim this tree strand by strand because I loved doing this. Now, this is a few pages long, so let me just read this. Okay. Thanksgiving Day was wonderful, but it was also the beginning of my favorite weekend of the year. It was the official kickoff of the holiday season. You couldn't miss the signs. They were all over. Strains of Bing Crosby singing White Christmas and silver bells, it's Christmas time in the city seemed to be coming from everywhere. Festive decorations were being put up in apartments as well as in public places. It was time to decorate our house, and I was the one who had the thrill and honor of doing it. By the way, I just touched my Christmas corsage. This is an original that used to belong to my mother. It's from the 50s. Ladies used to wear these on their coats all Christmas season long. Mommy gave me $1 to buy a new box of ornaments to put on our tree. That was all she could spare, so I had to choose just the perfect one that would go well with our already meager collection of ornaments past. I walked to Woolworths and Grant's, our 2 5 and dimes, to see what was available, and then agonized over what to choose. She trusted my judgment, which was a heavy burden to put on a 9-year-old's shoulders, but I was ready for the challenge. Actually, it was one of my favorite things in the whole wide world. Even though we crossed Tremont Avenue every day to go to school, today was special because all the holiday lights were up. For as far as I could see in either direction, there were swags of green or red garland stretched from one light post to the opposite side of the street. In the center of each garland was a bell, star, or Santa, all lit up. It was magical. I stood on the corner for a few minutes to take it all in, and then I noticed it was snowing a little. Actually, the flakes were so small it was more like dandruffing. It was getting cold and kind of windy, but I loved it because it felt so Christmassy. I crossed the street and stopped to look at the window of Webster's drugstore. Now, if you're familiar with Tremont Avenue, you would probably remember Webster's. Shiny powdered snow was everywhere, a background to showcase normally everyday products to make them look glamorous. All the toiletries were splendidly on display. Bottles of bubble bath, Evening in Paris toilet water, Hazel Bishop cosmetics, fancy comb and brush sets. And if you wanted to impress a lady with a really elegant gift, you could buy her something from the Prince Machiavelli collection. Remember these things, ladies? Oh, lest we forget the men. There was always the ever popular Old Spice. And there were other products like Kodak Brownie box cameras, chic lady shavers, a selection of Buxton wallets for men and women. And then you could also get unglamorous things too, like reading glasses, whatever. Now, for as beautiful as Webster's windows were, the liquor store on the corner gave it a run for its money. It had the same sparkling snow everywhere too, but the products themselves were the decorations. Bottles of J&B, Seagram's, Canadian Club, and Jack Daniels came in boxes of shiny foil. Red, blue, green, gold, silver. They all had ribbon bows on top. You know, it was hard to decide which color I liked best. Even the 6-packs of Schlitz and Rheingold beers were displayed in holiday finery. Not to be outdone, Schweppes tonic water, 7-Up, and White Rock ginger ale. Do they still have White Rock ginger ale? Were all dressed up for the holidays too. In a corner of the window was a cardboard display of Arthur Godfrey wearing a Santa suit, touting the joys of smoking Chesterfield. In the other corner was a display of people all dressed up, smoking and drinking, looking like they were having so much fun. The sign read, "Nothing says Christmas like good friends enjoying J&B." I could have stood there, hypnotized by the lights shining on everything, but I had a mission. I continued on my way, secretly hoping that someone would give my father liquor so I could keep those beautiful shiny boxes and bows. Now, Woolworth's was as glamorous as Grant's because it had a carved staircase leading down to the lower level. As I walked in the front door, I heard one of my favorite holiday songs, "Sleigh Ride Together with You," played by Arthur Fiedler and the Boston Pops, which brings me to this. We had a record player. This is one of the original albums we had, and look at this. Pied Pipers Sing Favorite Christmas Carols, True High Fidelity. You know what that is, high fidelity? And this one, Let's All Sing Our Christmas Favorites by the Fireside Carolers. Who ever heard of them? You don't have these things now. I still listen to these things. They're wonderful. I could go on and on and on and read. Let me just skip ahead here. Oh, the ornaments, right. Okay. So I saw this one box of ornaments. They were very simple and sweet. Clear, flat plastic snowmen and flat plastic blue stars that had lines grooved into them, sort of like a starburst design. I couldn't believe it. But at that very moment, Gene Autry was singing Frosty the Snowman. And what a coincidence that it was followed by Star of Wonder, Star of Light. Oh, this was definitely a sign from heaven. And guess what? Each box cost only 49 cents. That meant I could buy 2 boxes of ornaments for $1. Mommy would be so happy that I was spending wisely. I paid for my treasure and walked around the store a little longer, just browsing at the decorations. As I walked home in the cold air, the dandruff had turned into huge snowflakes by now. I loved the feel of them flying in my face, the holiday lights, the hustle and bustle of the shoppers hurrying along, and the thrill of knowing that I just experienced a sort of Christmas miracle. And I want to show you the blue star. I have 2. I don't know what happened to the little clear snowmen, but I still have 2 of these lights. Isn't that amazing? You know, I think, Steve, I have probably gone on too long. So I was wondering, is there anything you wanted to ask me?
Sure. Yeah, so why don't you talk a little bit about your own elementary experience? I don't think have you shown your yearbooks yet? Did I miss?
My autograph books. Yes, thank you
Yes.
for reminding me. I had 2. PS 92, 6th grade, junior high school 44, 7, 8, and 9. Everybody used to get these and they'd sign them. By the way, here's a picture of PS 92. Do any of you know the song? I think I remember it, but I'm not sure. I'm going to try. If you know it, join in. And if I do it wrong, please correct me. 92, the best and finest, faith we place in you, our beloved alma mater. Hail to 92. Sing the chorus, lift it onward, sing her praises true. Hail to you, our alma mater. Hail to 92. Now, people used to write the weirdest things in these autograph books. Sometimes they'd stick little things in them. Our next door neighbor, this is a family we were friendly with. This is an adult now writing this to me. This is dated June 23rd, 1959. Dear Betty, I hope you get ahead in life. You need one. Yours till Niagara Falls, and it's signed George. Now, George is 94 years old. I visit him every now and then. 3 years ago, I went back to New York. I went to visit him exclusively in Queens, but he could still drive then. We drove through the old neighborhood. It's changed so much. His old building is still standing, Mine and everything else on the block is down, except for one building up in the opposite sort of catty corner. It's a bar slash restaurant that my father used to frequent, and we would eat there. It was an Italian restaurant. But that little building is still standing. It's now some sort of a defunct Pentecostal church or something. I don't know what it is. But so that's what he wrote. And your girlfriends would write things like, oh, let me find a romantic one here. Oh, Mr. Bolo. Oh, God. He is wishing me good luck in high school. Daniel Bolo. He looked like Chuck Connors from The Rifleman. He was so cute. Mr. Bolo, can you hear that? If you can hear that, or if somebody knows him, please tell him to get in touch with me. Kids would write dumb things like, remember Grant, remember Lee, the heck with them, remember me. Dated till the kitchen sink. In the golden chain of friendship, regard me as a link. Okay. Then, what's this? When you grow old and have twins, don't come to me for safety pins. What the heck? You think you're beautiful. You think you're sweet. Did you ever stop to smell your feet? When you marry Donald and have 84, call them an army and then go to war. There was this kid in my class, Donald. I thought he was so cute. I have no idea whatever happened to him. Oh, this is from Donald. Oh, golly. The monkey is a friend of yours. I've heard it often stated that he and you and he are distantly related. This from the kid I'm in love with. Unbelievable. Let's see. Teachers are religious souls. They go to church on Sunday and pray to God to give them strength to worry us kids on Monday. Yes, Mrs. Gutstein. Did you all have a Mrs. Gutstein? She really was a teacher, but that wasn't her name. Actually, we did have a real Mrs. Gutstein, but she was young and beautiful and blonde, and she looked like Grace Kelly. So, okay, that's autographed books. I showed you my album covers showed you my uniform. I showed you my ornaments. It's amazing. These things still exist. Look at this. The color is wearing away, and these were my favorites, the ones that had these indentations in them. You see this? They have these sections in them. I don't know what you call them. They're so thin you can barely touch them anymore. But this is what I would go to buy at Grant's or Woolworths. I also mentioned Tom McCann and Miles shoe stores. They were on Tremont Avenue. And we used to walk all the way down to West Farms and then would walk to the Bronx Zoo. It was a hike, but we used to just do it. And sometimes we'd even walk as far as the Botanical Garden on a beautiful day. We used to walk in those days, and it was just wonderful memories. I wish people would be more one-on-one, like we are now. In the book, by the way, if you get the book or the Kindle, in the back, there were recipes, because we're always talking about meals, what we were eating. And I put recipes in the back of the book. A lot of these are ethnic Ukrainian dishes. We also talk about Ukrainian Orthodox Christmas, what that celebration was like. We talk about going to a small town wedding on the New Pennsylvania Turnpike and eating at Howard Johnson's. By the way, you could feed a family of 5 an entire dinner and dessert for $8.35. I know, because I have it in the book, and I looked online to make sure that I was accurate in the prices. So, oh, by the way, before I forget, I have a YouTube show called Betty Bornay, Everything 1950s. Every Wednesday, I put a new post on Instagram. I mean, this girl I hire puts it on because I can't do it. I don't know what the heck I'm doing on Instagram, but she posts it for me, and you will see a YouTube video of the subject of the day, whatever it is. It's a hoot. And Steve, may I mention my other book? May I give myself a free plug here?
Sure, please do. Please do.
Okay. As Steve mentioned, I wrote another book in 2 weeks. I did it just for fun. This I did for nostalgia, in the hope of influencing people to think back to happy moments in their lives and turn to them when you're feeling miserable. This is called Letters to Santa from the Lovelorn, an adult songbook of the oddest letters Santa ever received. And that's my beautiful niece on the cover. She posed for it. This is a hoot. Inside, I don't know how well you can see this, but inside you have, on the right-hand side, you have a handwritten letter by someone writing a letter to Santa. And on the left side, you see the music that was written by Mrs. Santa specifically for that letter. Do we have time for me to read one or two, Steve?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, here's one from a woman. Dear Santa, I've always been a fun-loving girl. My motto is, life is short, eat dessert first. Unfortunately, I have overeaten and now find myself in dire financial straits. What I need for Christmas is a man who can take care of me in the style to which I have become accustomed. Since I'm no longer a spring chicken, I prefer an older man, and it's signed Donna. Now here's the song Mrs. Santa wrote, and I will sing it as Mrs. Santa. Dear Santa, this is Donna. I've been good, kind, and fair. For my present this Christmas, send an old billionaire. Nothing special, hard of hearing, failing eyesight, not brave. Just one foot on a banana peel and the other in the grave. Here's one. This is one of my favorites. There's one for every day of the month of December up until Christmas, kind of like a Santa advent calendar. This is one of my favorites, and I'm going to read it the way I think this guy would sound, okay? He's an old hippie. Hey, man, can you help me find the lost love of my life? Her name is Moonbeam Angel. I met her at Woodstock in 1969, and I still can't get her out of my head. She's the most beautiful thing I ever saw, from her long blonde hair with flowers in it to her dirty bare feet. She was wearing a long blue granny dress and a watermelon seed necklace I gave her. We spent 3 far-out days smoking pot, tripping with friends, having sex under the stars. Everyone was so full of love, sharing tokes and munchies. I had a lot of old ladies over the years, but nobody compares to her. I'm 78 now, and I look different. I wonder what she looks like. I have no idea where she is, but I bet you could find her, man. I know you exist because I seen you in the psychedelic realm. So please, please, bring us together for Christmas. Peace and love, River Tripper. And we are non-sectarian. Here's one from, I'll just do one more quickie here. This shows we are open to anyone who wants to write into Santa. Dear Santa, we are 30-year-old twin sisters who happen to be Jewish. You see, nonpartisan, but we are so desperate we thought we'd try writing to you. Our parents insist we get married and start families this year. They've even threatened to put us in a convent for the rest of our lives if we don't. Do they have Jewish convents? I don't think so. Our prospects should be a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, stockbroker, or president of a company. Of course, he must be Jewish. We hope you can help us. We'll leave sponge cake and Manischewitz wine on the mantle next to the Hanukkah bush for you. Love and kisses, Rachel and Rebecca. And here's their song. Now, Booby, for those of you who don't know, Booby is an affectionate term for grandma. Dear Santa, Booby tells us, we are gems, we are pearls. Will you please send 2 husbands for 2 nice Jewish girls? We're tired of hearing mom and dad fetch and bitch. Send us 2 worthy spouses who are kosher and rich. So New York. I even have one here from a person. He's not really a person. He's a hybrid, half human, half extraterrestrial. There's one here from a guy who's a reincarnation of Joe DiMaggio, looking for the reincarnation of Marilyn Monroe. There's one here from the elves. I mean, if you want me to do another, I will. Or if you want me to just shut up already, I could go on forever and ever and ever with my little Christmas tree. Oh, Christmas tree. Hang up my little blue star again. There you go.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what questions, comments, reactions that we might have from some attendees. So
I shudder to think.
let's see. So we have one so far. It's just a comment from Julia Pelletier. Thank you so much for the beautiful talk! Exclamation point.
Oh, you're
Um,
very welcome, darling. You are very welcome.
but please, folks, weigh in with questions, comments. If there's anything that Betty spoke about that jogs your memory, we'd love to hear you share your own memories as well.
Yes, yes. Also, you can see this on YouTube. You just have to Google Mrs. Santa, the trophy wife. Mrs. Santa, the trophy wife, for obvious reasons.
That's right. And if folks are willing to even talk live, I can give you the ability to do that. Or if you're shy and just want to put questions or comments in Q&A,
Oh, don't
please.
be shy. Don't be shy. It's just us. Have a cup of coffee. Here we go. I'm going to have another one. Here we go. Let's have another cup of coffee. Yes, let's have another piece of pie. That's from the 30s, actually, from the
Okay,
Depression.
looks like we have a volunteer for someone
Oh,
to
goody.
let me
Okay.
okay, let's see. This is Julia here. Okay, go ahead, Julia.
Hi, thanks so much for the talk. It was really
Thank you.
interesting.
How old are you?
I'm 24.
Oh my God, this must be a shock for you. Do you believe people actually lived like this back then? I know because I lived through it.
No, but it's really cool to hear about. And yeah, the world isn't like that at all these days, but I love hearing
No.
about how it used to be.
Well, what goes around comes around. We can still bring back these old-fashioned values. I wish people would get off their stupid devices. I've seen babies in restaurants touching things. I've seen families sitting at a table, from little children to the adults, all like this. And I'm thinking, why aren't you sitting at home eating Velveeta macaroni and cheese and fish cakes like we did in the book? You should be all together sitting there talking about your day. No devices. Just, we need more human interaction. I don't care what the era is. This is what we need more, especially now, more than ever. We need it now. So, Julia, thank you for listening, and spread the word
Oh,
to
yeah,
your friends.
for sure. And I really enjoyed your talk. And I do agree that, nowadays it's changed a lot and we're forgetting how it used to be like before. Um, And I'm actually writing a book about a girl who's born in the Bronx and
Ah,
up there in the 1970s. Um, and yeah, I just love learning anything about the Bronx, um, in the past or the present. And I've been doing a lot of research about it. And I always like to meet people who grew up in the Bronx, and you know, in the 50s or the 70s, and I was hoping if you wouldn't mind sharing your email address with me if you have one. Uh
yes, yes,
if
sure.
you had any
If anybody wants
questions.
to email me, it's bet.bornay@yahoo.com. BET.BORNAY@yahoo.com. And I'm so happy to learn that you're writing about the Bronx and at such a young age. This is wonderful. And maybe if you're lucky someday, you'll grow up to be just like Betty Bornay.
Yeah. So
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you,
thank
Julia.
you so much. I didn't quite catch the email address though.
Oh,
I'll send it out to everyone who registered tomorrow when we circulate the video. So be on the lookout for that.
I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear from you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Anything I can do to help.
Okay, we're gonna move on here. Let me see here. Um, we have a couple more hands up, but before we get to those, another comment from Dennis Boyle. Heartwarming. I grew up on Walton and Tremont Avenue. I love tinsel to this day. My mom saved the Christmas corsages from year to year.
Ah,
Oh,
come.
Peggy Boyle. Okay, it's Peggy, who's on Dennis's wife. Thank you, Peggy.
Oh, do you wear the corsages? I wear them. I wear them inside though, because I don't want them to get hurt outside. But when I go somewhere, I put it on at Christmas time. I think it's just it just reminds me of I pretend I'm like my mother, way back. But all the women wore these. They were so glamorous.
Absolutely. Okay, we have another person who, two more people who want to talk live here. Carol Ann Maletti. Let's see here.
Hi, I loved it. It was wonderful. I'm a little bit younger. I was born in 1957 and lived in the Parkchester section of the Bronx
Mhm.
till I was about 8, and used to walk everywhere, go to the automat, all those cool things. And my grandmother would take us downtown on the subway, and we'd go to Macy's and Bloomingdale's. And then I moved to the Northeast Bronx, when I was in first grade, and I transferred from St. Helena's Catholic School to St. Francis de Chantal,
Mhm.
and the nuns were, let's just say, task.
I know
Uh,
what you're gonna say.
and more than once, my mother was called to the office because I talked too much. But basically, it was an idyllic childhood, being on the stoops at night
Yes.
in summer, just playing outside, riding our bikes. We'd walk everywhere, every,
Mhm.
you know, and I really enjoyed your talk. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. There's so much in the book that I haven't talked about, like going up to Alexander's, Fordham Road, different things like that. If you don't have the book, you could get the book or the Kindle. But I also did them both in Audible. Now, the Audible is the best of all because I do all the characters uh, in both books. So, and I know this one, the Audible, is only $3.95, I think, because it's only 35 minutes long. But and as I said, they do have the recipes. I also have photos in here. I took actual photos from our album, and I put them in here. I worked them into the story. In fact, on page 125, you can't see it, but here's the little corner table we had that we decorated with the white tree, this, and underneath on the lower level, my mother would put cotton batting, and we put these little houses. Do you remember these little houses? They were made in Japan after World War II. These little houses, do any of you remember these? They were like 10 cents a piece from Woolworths. She'd put them all down on the cotton batting, so we'd have a little village. And then the upper the upper layer of the 2-layer table had the tree, and that's where we put the presents on Christmas morning. Yeah, I I love this tree. I love these ornaments. I wouldn't trade this for the world. I don't care what beautiful stuff they have out now. This to me is everything because it's memories, actually. It's memories. And not only that, it's beautiful. This is quality stuff. It's glass. It was beautifully made, and look how it's held up, what, 70 odd years? Unbelievable.
Absolutely.
By the way, I get these things. If you want these things, I go to antique shows and antique shops. I find vintage clothing. In fact, I've got a wardrobe I've amassed for Betty, assuming I could fit into it, which is not easy anymore. But you can find all this great vintage stuff. So if you watch the series, you will see my vintage kitchen and bathrooms and other stuff. Everything is authentic because I'm really into the 50s.
Okay, let's see. We have another person, Francie. Let me go ahead and. Okay, go ahead, Francie.
Thank you, Dr. Payne. Betty, you are authentic, through
I
and
am.
through.
I am, and you sound like you are too.
Well, it takes one to know one. So, Betty, are you a member of the Guild since you're a voice actor?
No, I'm not. I work independently. I actually for many years I've been recording programs for the blind, and I'm starting to do I'm starting to do readings on Audible.
Oh, for the blind.
Yeah. Well, this is it's in different sections around the country. It's called Voice Corps, and it goes by different names depending on what part of the country you're in. But you can record programs for the blind, and I have a show where I read old movie magazines. So, and I do it in different voices. I have different characters. So I just love to read. I love to, I've always been an actress of one kind or another. You know, you understand what it is to be a real character, don't you? Yeah. Tell me about yourself. Did you grow up in the Bronx, or do you still live in the Bronx? Is she still there?
I think so. Let me see. Francie, are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
What neighborhood are you from?
Oh no, I don't live in the Bronx at all. But
Oh.
neither do you anymore, do you?
No, I don't. I live on
Where
another
do you
planet.
live?
I live on another planet, believe me. No,
Okay, Betty.
I moved out of the city. I wanted to live in a house, no longer in an apartment. You know, the city's too expensive. So I live in a house, and I found a wonderful 1950s ranch, which was pretty authentic when I got it, and I just restored what I had to. So if you look on the YouTube under Betty Bornay, everything 1950s, you'll see what a real 50s house looks like. So
Wonderful.
tune in.
Thank you, Betty. A joy.
You're welcome.
Okay, let me just see. Okay, other folks who have comments, questions, anything else, you know, either
Didn't anybody go to PS 92 or junior high school 44? Didn't
we might not be that lucky this time. I hope so though. If anyone went to either of those schools, please feel free to talk, and we'd love to hear from you. Or if you want to share your own elementary school experiences at another PS around the Bronx, that would be very interesting to hear about too.
You want to hear something silly? This is just a tiny little thing here. We really didn't have time to do, but this is for every woman who was once a girl, going from girlhood to womanhood, okay? They're going to a wedding, so the 12-year-old needs a real party dress. She's very fashion conscious all of a sudden. So they go up to Fordham Road to Alexander's. She and her mother and Juliana, they go. So it says here, you know, people thought of it as the Bronx's answer to Macy's. As we passed through the we'll skip that. Okay, we took the escalator up to the second floor to the junior section. Rosemary ran over to the party dresses. She kept taking them off the racks and held them up against herself in front of the full-length mirror. She wanted them all, but after much discussion, the three of us narrowed it down to 5 choices. We went into the dressing room for her to try them on. I like them all, but no matter which one I have on, something's missing. Yes, I said, your chest. You don't have one. How can you say that? Ma, make her stop. Rosemary was angry. Well, it's true, but we can't stop at the foundations department later, Mommy said, and keep your voice down. They can hear you in the fitting room. So anyway, they go over to the fittings department. The department was very busy tonight, full of customers, especially teenage girls. Rosemary thought she recognized some kids from school. My daughter needs a training bra, our mother said to the sales lady. Ladies, did that happen to every one of you? Was that the most embarrassing thing in your life? Your mother saying to a stranger, my daughter needs a training bra. How humiliating. Please, Ma, everyone can hear you. This is so humiliating, Rosemary said as she hid herself behind a rack of nightgowns. The sales lady went up to her and said, darling, I am a professional corseteer and I know my business. She put her arm around Rosemary's shoulder and said, let's go into a fitting room. She saw Mommy starting to follow and said, not you, just the young lady. Let's go into the fitting room to see which brassiere is just right for you. I promise we'll find one that'll make you look like you have a real chest. Well, that seemed to give my sister a little more dignity. But ladies, do you all remember the time when you had your first bra? I'm sure it's different for the very young girls now because they wear bras as clothing these days. But for the older ladies, this was a rite of passage, and it could have been heaven or hell depending on how you got your first bra. Oh, anyway, all I can say is, darlings, read the book or the Kindle or get the Audible because there's so much in here. You can learn how to make stuffed cabbage. You can learn how to make our favorite Velveeta macaroni and cheese. I still make it every now and then. It's like comfort food, along with fish cakes, salmon fish cakes. Anyway, how much time do we have left?
Well, so I think we'll just check in with people, see if there's any final questions. Let's see if anyone else wants to add any questions or comments, and then if not, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Let's just give it another
Okay.
few
Or,
seconds.
or if you'd like to hear any more songs from Santa.
Give us one to close out.
Okay, let me see. There are so many here. It's hard to choose. Oh, you know what I'll do? Santa, we work 364 days a year for you. Constant toil. Did it ever occur to you that we need time off occasionally? We're not machines. We may be small, but we're normal, hot-blooded creatures who have feelings and desires. We want a break lounge, a place where we can get drinks and have female companionship. You, of all people who travel around the world and know lots of women, should understand. Get the hint? And it's signed, your loyal, overworked elves. P.S. Did you ever hear the word strike? And here's the elf song. You work us very hard. We demand to take breaks. If you don't, we will strike. No more toys will we make. A nice comfy lounge just for us, what we choose, filled with real living dolls and a shelf full of booze. That's why it's an adult songbook. You don't give this to someone who's 5 years old, okay? You give this to your boyfriend or your neighbor or the stripper down the street, whatever. I don't know. Whatever.
Let's see. There's a couple more questions and comments, and then we'll go ahead and end.
Call it a day. Okay.
Okay. So here's one from Julia again. What was the mac and cheese made with?
I'll read you the recipe. How's that? How's that for a deal? Let's see. Okay. 16-ounce box of elbow macaroni, 16-ounce pack of original Velveeta, 1 stick of butter, a medium green pepper, finely minced, medium sweet onion, finely minced, 4-ounce can of tomato paste, 4-ounce can of tomato sauce. Now you cook the macaroni, of course, and put it to the side. You melt the butter in a large saucepan. You add the minced onion and pepper and saute until it's tender. Then you chop the Velveeta into chunks and you add it to the mixture and stir until it's melted. Then you add the tomato sauce and the tomato paste, mix everything well, little salt and pepper, and then you put it on your macaroni. It's better the next day when you heat it up in a frying pan. It gets kind of crispy around each little elbow. Yum.
Okay, and then finally, this is again from Francie. You can take the girl out of the Bronx, but not the Bronx out of the girl.
That's a goodie. New York will always be my beloved homeland, even though it's changed so much, and I never get back there, really. I don't even know if I want to go back there anymore. But, I have these wonderful memories of the old New York that were there when I was still young. And I mean the physical old New York, older buildings. They used to have beautiful street lights that were like this. They were sort of works of art with these big balls on the top that were purplish color, believe it or not, and a lot of brownstones. And I don't know, it just looked different. Even our nondescript little neighborhood with the older buildings, it was just charming and sweet and clean and nice and friendly. And I can still hear things in my head. I can smell them. I can see things in my mind's eye. They'll be with me forever. And I hope everybody has memories like that, some kind from somewhere, because that's what you need, especially when you're not feeling well, when you want to take your computer like I do and smash it up against the wall because you don't know what you're doing. So
Well, thank you very much, Betty, for walking us down
memory
lane
lane.
and hopefully hopefully making some positive memories kind of flash up before folks who shared shared in your experiences um and yeah, luckily there's still some great neighborhoods in the Bronx anyway, where there's still good memories being made. I think a large parts of Manhattan are, completely being transformed, and every trace of old New York is kind of vanishing. But
Yeah,
there's
I know.
still some great neighborhoods in the Bronx, and very fortunate to have you share your memories of growing up in the Bronx as well. So thank you so much, Betty. I
You're welcome.
encourage folks, if you enjoyed what you heard tonight, please go and purchase Betty's book in one way or another.
Or
Uh,
the audible, yeah.
that's right. That's right. I either or both. And I'll be sending out a link to where you can purchase those items tomorrow when I send a follow-up email. And also hope some of you all will join. We have more events and virtual programs coming up this month, not to mention in the future, but please, you can check out our website, bronxhistory.org. You can find a full list of events. And even though we're not in person, please join me in giving Betty a round of applause. Thank you very much, Betty.
You're most welcome, and thank you again, doctor, even though you're not a podiatrist. Thank you for all of your technical assistance.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Hope everyone has a great night, and hope to see many of, if not all of you soon.
And happy holidays. Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah, happy whatever you celebrate, and happy New Year. And most of all, be happy. Find happiness somewhere. Okay?
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Betty. Bye-bye.
Bye.